you all Rotarians for inviting me. A couple of weeks ago, Melinda, she's not here, she had reached out to me and asked if I would want to give a talk. And I was pleasantly surprised, and I said, what topic would you like me to talk about? And she said, oh, you decide. And I was so excited because I have been pondering capitalism, colonialism, socialism, all the kinds of constructs that we, especially as Africans, are forced to sort of live under or superimposed on us. I thought it would be interesting to share my thoughts. Resilience. So the first time they came, it must have been so traumatic for everybody. They could have said, it's too hot, too many mosquitoes, we're running all the way back to England, we're never going to come back here again. But guess what they did? They came back again and again and again for close to 500 years. I mean, that is relentless resilience. We want to colonize this part of the world. We want to dominate them politically and economically. And they focus on that and they make sure they do it. Now, the fourth value is automation of a system that can continue after you have left. So you can gracefully exit any system you have set up. How can we relate this to our lives? It's very important, these four values. So the first one is precision planning. Do you have a business plan? Do you have an educational plan? Do you have your life plan? Do you have all of these things written out? It seems very mundane, but guess what? All the huge businesses in capitalism, they have plans. All the big colonial empires, it was all a plan. And it was followed and excellently executed. The second one is the excellent execution. Do you have the capital you need to execute your plans? Do we understand what the banking system is like? Do we understand how to extract, I know there's a bank here, and of course many accountants and bankers here as well, how to extract what you need from the capitalist society, the capitalist system? Do you know that you can access loans, mortgage loans, SME credit, you can get investments, you can get venture capitalists to invest in your business. There's so many other tools you can use in a bank to get the capital you need to execute your plans. It's vital that you understand it. Because some of us go to university and we study maybe veterinary medicine or something we are passionate about. And then you want to now set up your little vet clinic, and now you don't have the capital. You don't know what to do. You might save here and there, but then it gets harder and harder. And like we're saying, you're in this huge ocean where everyone is trying to struggle and swim. So you have to say, okay, there are banks, there are businesses, there are investors, and you have to understand how all of these players work in the ecosystem so that you can get your veterinary clinic set up and you can move forward. That is just one example. You might have a fashion idea, whatever you want to do. Are you able to extract capital from a capitalist society? Relentless resilience. So now let's assume you're a farmer, and you've managed to go to the agricultural bank and you've gotten maybe $1 million to start your farm work somewhere. But then you're competing with people who maybe brought in $10 million and they have 100 acres and they have the state-of-the-art equipment, and your business just can't compete. You can't sell enough of your yams or your tomatoes, and the business crumbles. Guess what? There's insurance. There's so many other tools in the financial capitalist system that can protect your loss and still keep you above water, so to speak, and take you to your promised land. I'll give you an example of something that happened recently. Prudential Insurance Limited, Ghana, the former chairperson of Prudential International,
happened to be on the yacht which sank off the coast of Italy about 2 months ago or so. And although he had left the insurance company as chairman, he had now become chairman of Morgan Stanley at the time of his death. May he rest in peace. His name was Jonathan Bloomer. His life was insured for hundreds of millions of pounds, and so was his wife's. And when they passed in that unfortunate accident, guess what? Their children made that claim and became multi-millionaires, generational wealth, which should last, hopefully, for generations. Because, kids might just want to have the best time and spend it all, which should last for generations. So that simple insurance policy, which is a sign of your own relentless resilience, because you tried this yam farm, but out of no fault of yours. Capitalism says competition is brutal. Somebody has their own 100-acre with mechanized farming, and your farm crumbled. But insurance can give you some money to offset that loss, right? Insurance can give you some money if a loved one passes away. You can get seriously wealthy from a capitalist tool like insurance, right? Insurance can give you money. If, heaven forbid, somebody gets injured at work, you get compensation. Sometimes it's also in millions of dollars. Although at the loss of health and wealth, and of health, it's still some sort of compensation. There are, of course, so many other tools in a capitalist system that give people a lot of money. Even divorce can make some women super rich overnight, right? So, I mean, you read it all the time. Billionaire divorces his wife, she walks away with $500 million, right? So, do we understand all these things? And are we really practicing them? Are we really taking advantage of these tools in capitalism? And the last one is automation of the system after you gracefully exit. So let's say this our farmer, his yam farm does very well. There wasn't too much competition. He was able to ensure steady supply of yams, supply Makala markets, all the markets in Ghana, and it worked so seamlessly. He became quite wealthy. And then at 50 or 60, he says, you know what, I want to stop. But I've hired enough people, I've taught them enough about yam farming, that if I disappear for 5 years, they can run this farm, just like we're teaching English when the colonial masters have left. And we can even teach ourselves the English. Are you able to teach your farm hands and staff, or even if you're a banker, can your team work without you for 5 years? Because guess what? We have worked without colonial input for almost 70 years. Meaning there's a system that we have to be able to put in place that can ensure that even when you exit gracefully, guess what? The yams will still be produced, right? And that comes in the form of things like dividends, things like profits, things like pensions. So I'm trying to relate these 4 core values to actual tools in our financial capitalist system that can truly protect you from being eaten by a shark, figuratively speaking, or sinking like the Titanic. Because poverty is painful. Poverty is scary. If the capitalist system does not work for you, it can be a terrible life sleeping under the bridge at Kwame Nkrumah's circle. If colonialism does not also work for you, if you're not able to really fit into that construct, it can also be a very terrible life. But if it does work, and pure capitalism works very well, but for very few people. So you find, say, everyone is really quiet. I hope I'm still
They're listening. They're listening.
Thank you. So capitalism works very well, but for very few people. Here in Accra, you might find maybe 10% of the people enjoying capitalism. They have great businesses which are on autopilot. Their staff understands how to run it without them. They're in Hawaii on holiday for a year. It's still making its money. They had precision planning. To put up a hotel like this, you would have your floor plans, you have an architect, you would have planned it to the T to make sure it's a lovely hotel that will stand the test of time. And you would have gone through excellent execution. So I'm trying to relate these 4 core values to everything we're seeing, just so that you understand it's not a fluke. Things just don't happen. Things just don't endure. There are values we have to know about. There are constructs we live within that we have to respect and fit into, because it's too late now to dismantle it all. It's just too late. People under 40 have 0 chance, unless maybe, I don't know, another 10 or so generations, of dismantling these constructs. So the earlier we understand them, respect them, adapt, and use them and get what we want, the better. Otherwise, it will use us, extract your labor, exploit us economically. So you look at things like Galamsey, I mean, I could go on and on, I don't want to. It will exploit us, it will use, and it will abandon. And it will be a terrible situation, not just for individuals, for countries as well. So this is extremely important. So the 4 core values are precision planning. It works for everyone and everything. Excellent execution. Can you raise capital? Can you execute it? Capital doesn't always have to be money, by the way. It can be, do you have social capital? Do you have cultural capital? Recently, some people were speaking ill of a very prominent chief in Ghana, and they had to go kneel down and apologize. I don't want to mention names, but so the cultural capital, do you understand it? Because if you respect your kings outside of the construct of capitalism and outside of the construct of colonialism, do you know how wealthy you could be? If you respect the king of the Ashanti Kingdom, for instance, and he gives you 100 acres to farm, I mean, that is cultural capital, traditional capital, ancestral capital. It doesn't always have to be financial capital. I just want to make that very clear. But if it must be financial capital, oh, I need money to open my little salon, I want to do a barber shop, I want to do a hotel, then you now have to talk about financial capital. And you still need a business plan, decision planning. You still need to go there and get your cash out. And of course, relentless resilience. It might fail. The truth is, it could fail, right? Chances are, they say what, 70 to 80% of startups do fail. Do you have a backup? Do you have a safety net? Do you have some insurance? Some businesses fail and the founders never recover. It's extremely painful and difficult to live through. And it's sad to watch. But capitalism says, let them be, I have to do my thing. Capitalism can be very cruel and brutal and selfish because it just watches people. And so our humanity and how humane or inhumane are we? That we can drive by and watch little children begging and sleeping under the street, on the bridges, because there's just no money and we don't care. So it has far-reaching consequences in our society. How humane or inhumane are we? When a lot of women nowadays say, I can't date a broke man, right? It's capitalism. What she's saying is, my affections, I'm sorry, my affections will go to somebody who's able to navigate successfully the constructs of capitalism, then I can give him love. Where is our sense of respect for an intrinsic value for individuals? Men say the same thing nowadays. If she's not a working class lady, I can't date her. What he's saying is, if she hasn't gone through the constructs of colonialism, and if she's not sufficiently educated enough to function in a capitalist system, she can't be my wife. I'm not ready to invest my time or energy or whatever in that. So you see that, although we're talking about capitalism and it has far-reaching consequences in the society, in our relationships, even in our intimate relationships. where people begin to put money before affection, money before hunger, money before homelessness. I mean, it gets to a point where does it end? So there is a need for us to look deeply into perhaps other constructs that we can add to these two main existing ones, because a lot of people are not having a lot of fun in these two. Some of us are, right? Some people are. I mean, luckily my parents are here and they sent me to good schools, and I managed to work in good companies, and I decided to retire early, and I purposely pulled myself out of the constructs to explore things I was more passionate about, like art, traditional, spirituality, and more other things which have existed before the colonial people came. I don't like to say the word masters. So I don't say colonial masters, I'll say colonialists, or yeah. But not all of us have been able to have parents who would do that. Send you to school every day for 20-something years. Some parents pass on, some fall ill, they have misfortunes in business, there's no insurance, and the children suffer, right? I value education so much that I looked for some of the best schools in the world to put my daughter in. And she's learned a lot from a boarding school she went to in the UK. And what they learn, you won't believe it, it's slightly different from what they teach us here, or what we are now teaching ourselves in terms of the English Western education. They are learning one language. They speak English at home and they speak English in school. We are forced to speak Ga, Shri, and all our beautiful languages at home till you're 3-4, and then you get into school where you have to learn a whole new language all over again. So not all children's brains are able to handle all of this. And some might drop out. Some have dyslexia. Some have other talents, which the Western educational system will not identify. And so we need to, as another matter of urgency, explore other ways to help those who may not be as successful or as intelligent or able to, because capitalism is highly competitive. If you're not in the top 20%, forget it, you can probably not even get a job, or the type of job that can pay the type of cash that will keep you above water, right? So I have 2 suggestions of possible ways we can create systems that can protect people from sinking like the Titanic. And the first one is something I've called a food station. So this is still in its iterative stage. I'm still just sort of running it through my mind. It's in its precision planning stage. So this is what a food station basically would be like. Imagine next to every fuel station where you buy petrol and diesel, right next to it, there's a food station. And what is a food station? It's exactly the same perimeter size of the petrol station, but it's a farm. To offset the environmental damage or the CO2 emissions from the petrol station, we have a farm with just a nice green, maybe 5 or 6 crops that grow and harvest every 3 months or something. I mean, this is very random. Tomatoes, onions, contobre, I don't know. And you can go in there with your Ghana card, scan it, and get a basket of food for free. You can go in there, scan it, and read the place and work, and then you get 2 baskets because you did some work. So that gives people something to do, something to eat. It's socialism, but not quite. And of course, that will depend on a lot of political leadership, legislature, and things like that before it can even be implemented. Why did I say next to every fuel station? Because as you drive home, please try and count all the petrol stations you see on your way home. And then try and count all the clinics, health clinics you see on your way home. If you count more petrol stations than health clinics or hospitals, it means what? We care more about our cars, than we do about our bodies. It's absurd. It's capitalism all over again. We care more about the money than we do about who's alive, right? If there's an accident, you can get to a petrol station faster than you can to a hospital. It's absurd, right? So my little suggestion would be, let's have some sort of hybrid socialism / capitalism going on, especially for African countries, where next to every petrol station there's a food station, which essentially is just a nice little city farm. People can go work and eat for free, and it just works like that. Because if we can earmark the space for petrol and dig up a big hole, because we owned a petrol station some 20 years ago in Adabaka, and you would have to dig up how many tons of sand, I don't know, to fit in a tank, thousands of liter tank, to store the petrol. I mean, if you can move equipment and sand that much, surely right next to it, it should become law that there is a plot next to it that is just green, right, to offset all of that environmental damage. Of course, if we go into the gold Galamsey thing, that's a whole other type of regenerative agriculture that needs to be done if we want to offset or integrate another type of socialism / capitalism. And by the way, I'm not really a proponent of socialism or communism. Karl Marx had his beautiful idea, let everybody be equal and let everybody have, you know, the same of everything, so we can all just have peace and contentment. But it's been argued that he didn't quite understand human nature. People are creative, people are competitive by nature. And even if they give everybody here, okay, you know what, universal basic income, don't work, we'll give everybody 1,000 cedis every month. You won't believe it. 2 people here will start baking the most delicious, you know, cakes, and we'll all be giving that person 200, and that person becomes rich again. So capitalism kind of is like an almost natural tendency, because people always create value and want to, of course, exchange that value for something else. So communism, socialism, I'm not a fan of those per se, because human nature doesn't naturally fit into those constructs. The other constructs that we might want to maybe just touch on slightly is you know, there are constructs like right now, very religious countries. You might be living in a country that is under Sharia law, right? So that's how do you navigate that construct, right? Make a mistake and steal something, hands are cut off. I mean, there are so many other laws. People are living in war-torn Ukraine, Palestine, you name it. So they have to navigate different things to survive. But here we are trying to navigate capitalism and colonialism. I think it's a little easier for us in Ghana. But at the same time, let's look into ensuring that those who are still suffering have some sort of food, you know, guarantee with the food stations, which infuses some sort of socialism or social responsibility as a people, and environmental responsibility as well. So my second little suggestion would be for individuals. If you've tried everything, you've done your precision planning, you've done your excellent execution, you've done your relentless, you know, resilience, your focus, you did everything, and yet the business or the career or something still failed. I know a lot of people who bought treasury bills and there were some issues, they still couldn't get their money back. So you trusted, you know, somebody who is trustworthy or some entity that's true, and still things didn't work. So if all else fails and you seem to be alone on the journey, what can you do? I would say turn to agriculture. It's nature's capitalism. There's nowhere in the world where you can plant 1 seed of tomato and get 100 tomatoes, right? It's like saying, I'll give you 1,000 cedis today, and in 3 months you give me 100,000 cedis. It doesn't, like, in all the man-made constructs, none is as profitable as nature. So if you're able to have a farm anywhere, which is why I'm really looking at the government looking at, creating little city farms, and even outside of the city, bigger ones, because it's exponentially profitable, it's sustainable, it's renewable, it's biodegradable. I mean, you name it, right? You don't have to worry about pollution and things like that. So if you're lucky enough to have a plot or half a plot or an acre or 10 in your village, and you figure out how to raise capital from the banks or from investors, and you can go into some sort of agriculture, maybe for yourself, first of all, and then maybe for your greater community. That could be the very last resort of capitalism, which is a natural sort of capitalism. Today, in most developed countries, 40% of the food they produce agriculturally is thrown away. They have perfected mass production to the point where they make sure you have way too much. And this is just from nature, right? We're not talking about processed food, just fresh foods. They throw away 40%. So it just tells you how amazing and profitable nature can be. And then finally, I'm going to say one last sentence. Well, I'm going to expand on it. But yeah, this last sentence is, do not let capitalism and colonialism consume you. When I say consume you, what do I mean? When somebody is ready to do a ritual killing for money, capitalism has consumed them. Their sense of humanity is gone. They're ready to take anybody, their fellow African, sacrifice them for money. Once people get to that point, they have been consumed, because now they're thinking about buying a Maserati or Ferrari, and I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? Secondly, do not, when someone goes into things like human trafficking, drug trafficking, in order to make obscene amounts of money, in order to do, what is the end goal? To buy that Mercedes or this or Rolls Royce or that, and then they're ready to take, and it happens right now in Accra. It was so shocking. I was taking my daughter to the airport. She was going back to boarding school in England, and we saw a group of young girls and boys with somebody, sort of holding their passports and giving them instructions. And my friend was there. She said, he's a trafficker, he's a human trafficker. I'm like, really? Why would you say that? Look at the way they're all looking. Do they, because she said she sees them a lot in the airports. One guy just gathers these young girls and boys and gets them passports, tells them they're going to Iraq or Turkey or whatever, so some type of job. By the time someone can do that, they've already been consumed by capitalism, right? So they take young people on the streets, and really these are kids, 18, 19, 20, whatever. Get them documentation, get money from somebody in some country, get them there, and you don't know the inhumane conditions they're going to be subjected to. But you get paid maybe, I don't know, $5,000 per person. So when someone begins to sacrifice people, traffic people, traffic drugs, then you know they have been consumed by capitalism. And that's why I think it's so important for us to talk about capitalism and its effect and how to navigate it safely. Because we all want the fancy Maseratis and whatever, we all do. And in my own little way, maybe some 8 years ago, I actually bought my dream car. It was a Mercedes and I had a good time with it. But at the end of the day, it's glitter, it's not gold. And we need to understand this. Otherwise, it can consume you. So after the Mercedes, you now want what? The Rolls Royce. You know what I mean? And then you want the mansion in wherever. And then before you know it, you're forced to, not forced to, but you. And then of course, when you find young people who get to the point where they would rather walk through the Sahara Desert, stay in Libya for some time, get on a dinghy boat to cross the Mediterranean, and just drop in Italy or France, and start to survive for money, they've been consumed by capitalism. And when I say consumed by capitalism, it means their brains have been, the A for Apple has turned to F for Ferrari, M for Mercedes, you know, mansion, everything they see on TV, it has consumed them to the point where they can't even see the farmlands here that are so profitable. They can't even see the wonderful culture that we have, our social capital, our cultural capital. They're so brainwashed. So don't let these constructs consume you, because as wonderful as they are, they're dangerous. And we also have other constructs we have to enjoy. We have our culture, we have our nature, we have our agriculture, we have our traditions, we have our people. Oh my goodness. All the beautiful people in Africa who have been almost totally consumed by capitalism and colonialism. I always stumble in that. So do not let it consume you. As you search for greener pastures and you want to be successful, please and please don't hurt other people, don't traffic anyone, don't walk through the deserts. And the sad thing is, there are some people who are actually doing seemingly well, very, out of the construct, and are really sinking. But those who are even on the boat on the ocean of, capitalism can still get very, not irritated, but almost begin to look down on their own homeland. So now they become too colonized, too sophisticated for the land of their ancestors, for the land from which they belong, to which they belong, that they would rather go to the embassy and emigrate to the UK, US, Australia, whatever. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, it's a planning tax. But it gets to a point where we get so colonized and so swept up in capitalism, and one is not even able to enjoy the beauty of Africa and all that we have to enjoy. And that brings me to the end of my
Well, it's a very big thank you. We have another tradition that we do.
Okay.
Yeah, which we'll ask you 4 questions.
Okay.
And those 4 questions are, let me ask you the first one.
Okay.
So, based on the conversation we've had today, is everything that you said the truth?
Yes, it is. To the best of my knowledge.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Absolutely.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Yes, yes. And conversations. Yes, I think so.
And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yes, absolutely.